Good morning. Today, our New Testament reading, we would finished yesterday 2 Corinthians chapter 11 and today chapter 12. And Paul continues to talk about kind of what it's cost him to be an apostle of Jesus Christ and some of the beatings and some of the things that have gone on and that he has a thorn in his side, he talks about, and that 3 times he's prayed and he's asked that this would be removed, but he's come to realize in verse 9 it says, "But the Lord said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in my weakness." And I think about that, my grace is sufficient for you. And what a wonderful comfort that is to know that God's grace is sufficient for us. And now I'm going to go back to the Old Testament reading for yesterday, Ecclesiastes 1, 2, and 3. And the writer of Ecclesiastes, they're not really 100% in unison, in agreement as to who wrote it, but it starts out with reflections of a philosopher. The words, it says, "Vanity of vanities, says the teacher, all is vanity. What do people gain from their toil? What do they at which they toil under the sun? A generation comes, a generation goes. The sun rises, the sun sets, it hurries off to come up and rise again." And it's a reminder that, life goes on. It's, the circle of life is out there. The wind blows to the south, it turns around to the north, it goes round and round. The streams run into the sea, and the sea never overflows. And it's just a reminder of, sometimes life seems mundane. Life seems like it's so repetitious, and it is. I mean, we get up in the morning, we do the same thing today as we did yesterday, pretty much, for the most part. If you're a working person, you go to work. If you're retired, you do what you are retired. But life goes on. And then he continues to talk about that and wisdom and joy. But what I want to talk most about today is the first 8 verses of Ecclesiastes 3. And I first became really aware of these words when I was about 12 years old. 1965, a group named The Byrds made the song "Turn, Turn, Turn." It was #1 hit in December. They released it in October or September, and they'd had earlier that summer a song, "Mr. Tambourine Man," they released in April. And to be honest, I listened to both of those songs just a little bit ago, and if I could have gotten it so that "Turn, Turn, Turn" was playing in the background, I would have done that but I had it playing, and I went to Facebook Live, and it quit, so we won't hear that. But the song "Turn, Turn, Turn," for every turn, 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 for every season, turn, 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 a time for every purpose under heaven. And it goes on, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to harvest, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, a time to build up. And the different times in our lives are for different things. And when we're children, it's the time then we learn and we become who we're going to be for the rest of our lives. We go to school, and hopefully we have counselors and people that help us figure out what it's going to be that's going to be our best profession in life. It's the verse 13 says, "It's God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasure in their toil." If you have a job that you love, it is so much easier to go to, so much easier to do it day after day. If you really detest your job, it gets to be a burden, and it's so hard to go to work that way. But when you take joy in what you do, and when the people you work with have that same sense of joy, and you have a family at work that you enjoy going to, that you look forward to meeting, and I know that today in today's society with lockdowns and so many places, working from home, we don't have all of that connectedness in our workplace anymore to some extent, and I think that connectedness is one of the things that we really miss, to be able to know who we're dealing with, and I've seen different shows where somebody wants to buy out a business, or they want, somebody's looking to retire, looking for someone to take over, and And a place that I do business with, the person who had been running it for years was wanting to retire and to devote more time to other things that were important to him, as his retirement age. And he looked and he found someone, and his words to me was, I found someone who loves this business as much as I do. And what a wonderful thing, that these guys enjoyed going to work and seeing the beauty of what they could do and to work with the people and stuff. And it's so important to enjoy what you're doing, And verse 12, I read 13 first, but the writer says, I know that there is nothing better than them to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they should live, And really, when we're happy, when we're filled with, I don't know if I should say filled with pleasure, but when we find pleasure in life, and when we feel satisfied, it is so much nicer than having that hungering and thirsting and never feeling quite like we've got it. It's good to hunger and thirst for more and to want a little bit more, to want better, to work for that. But to be fulfilled and to be satisfied with what we have. And that's a part of this, a time for everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven, and a time to throw away stones, a time to gather stones, a time to embrace, a time to refrain, a time to seek, a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to throw away, a time to tear, and a time to sow. And this is one of the hard things, a time to tear. There are times in our lives when we need to separate ourselves from what's going on. We need a change. And those times can be hard and they can be scary. But when we have that courage, when we have that ability to take ourselves out of a place that doesn't bring us joy, and then hopefully find a place that we can get sewn back into, stitched back together with people that make us happy, and a workplace that fulfills us. It's so important in everything that way. And I guess we could talk about marriage that way too. There are some marriages that seem to be made in heaven and just work, and it's people do an awful lot of work to make their marriage work, but sometimes you just can't. And so there are times in our lives when we need to separate ourselves from the bad and to find the better, the new, a time to tear away, a time to sow, a time to keep silent, a time to speak, a time to love, and a time to hate. And this time to love and a time to hate, when, again, with marriage, we need to work together that way, even though we may not like 100% of what our spouse does. We may not, we work together to get through those things, but this time of love is so much more important. And to fill ourselves with that love, and to fill ourselves with that, find what it is that we love and what we're passionate about, and pursue that in our relationships and in our work life and in all that we do. He says there's a time for war and a time for peace. And again, when things aren't going right, when people are oppressed, there's so much truth to these first 8 verses of Ecclesiastes 3 that pertain to our lives in so many ways. And I'm pretty sure that I'll have the song "Turn, Turn, Turn" running through my head quite a bit today, and probably for the next few days. I know I did yesterday after having read this yesterday morning, fairly early on. But it's just a reminder to us that the writer starts out, vanity of vanities. What are we pursuing with all of this? We get up and we go through the same motions day after day, and here, especially verse 12 and 13, where he says, I know there is nothing better for them than to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they should live. And moreover, it's God's gift that we should all drink and take pleasure in our toil. It's just, God's looking out for us. God wants good for us. And that's so important to know as well, that, God doesn't dole punishments out on us. God isn't sending plagues. God isn't sending hailstorms and drought and all of those things. God wants good for us. But yet God doesn't sit up there with a marionette string running everything that we do and controlling every aspect of our lives. And this is a part of the, for every time there is a season. For every matter under heaven, there's a season. And we go through those in our lives, the joy of the birth of a child. And as that child grows, we watch that child grow, and the child matures and becomes educated and gets a job and hopefully gets married and has a family and is fulfilled. We watch all of those times that matter. And it's easy to think about it for our children and our grandchildren and that, but to think about it for ourselves as well. There's been times in our lives for everything. We've all been happy, we've all mourned, we've all planted, we've all sown, we've all had heartaches. But through it all, God walks with us. And that's the greatest gift that we can have, that God walks with us each and every day. And God wants us to be happy.